Hello, my name is Marie-Louise Elia and I'm a PhD candidate at the Université Saint-Joseph de Beyrouth and Université Lyon 3 Jean Moulin. And today I'll be presenting my paper Ghost Narratives, Platform Erasure and the Speculative Void, a triptych of the unseen. The theme of the conference, the yet to be known, prompted a series of ideas that I've developed to address a paradox in our current era. We are told that we live in a time of complete visibility and accessibility. Yet, our digital horizons are increasingly defined by the unseen. In this paper and presentation, I interpret the yet to be known not just as a narrative feature, but also as the first pillar of a theoretical triptych. The triptych consists of 3 stages. The yet to be known represents a space of creative possibility, the branching path and unrealized outcomes embedded within interactive systems. The second stage, the known no more, focuses on platform erasure, specifically Netflix's removal of its entire interactive catalog. And finally, the never will be known analyzes the engineered inaccessibility of Robert Rodriguez's film 100 Years, locked away until 2115. Together, these stages trace a transformation in how we engage with moving images and their absence. We begin with the yet to be known, which represents a space of creative possibility and what we will define as ghost narratives. To understand this, we must first look at the interactive digital narratives, or IDNs. Interactive films merge narrative elements with the active intervention of the viewer, who becomes the interactor. For work to qualify as an IDN or an interactive digital narrative, it must be realized in a system containing potential narratives and experienced through a process that results in products that represent instantiated narratives. Instantiation refers to the IDN's quality to produce different narratives from the same system through their interactors' participation. Proto-story is the term that describes the pre-designed database of discrete storylets or narrative modules. As we see on screen, in a branching structure, in the act of a single viewing and with every choice taken, the interactor assembles the storyline, excluding other narratives. These hidden, excluded paths, combined with the replayable nature of the IDN, define the state of the yet to be known. It is the tension between the instantiated narrative and the branches that remain hidden in the database. The unwatched footage is not truly absent. It remains as a haunting presence within the structure, forming what I call the ghost narratives. In a pure branching structure with binary choices as this one, the number of potential storylines would be 2 to the power of n decision points. However, IDN use narrative vectors to reduce costs and retain authorial control. As we can see in the first image, the IDN Late Shift by Tobias Weber was initially released in cinema as a collective interactive experience, before it was released for individual playthroughs. As the plot unfolds, the interactor is presented with a set of 2 choices, deciding on behalf of the protagonist, Matt, for a total of about 180 decision points. So, for an instantiated storyline of 1 hour of Late Shift, more than 4 hours of film footage remain hidden in the database, constituting the yet to be known. To understand the yet to be known in practice, let's look at the sequence from Late Shift. In the storyline we just watched, the interactor chose to drive rather than to run away. They chose to cooperate, which led the story directly into the next sequence, to the safe house. But we can see on the right branch all the now hidden paths that the interactor did not experience. When the interactor makes a meaningful choice with consequence out of the binary, they set aside 50% of the potential film. By the second choice, they are navigating only 25% of the original storyline. By the fourth choice,
93.75% of the film's potential has already been consigned to the yet to be known. Of course, as we can see in the flowchart, no matter the choices, the narrative vector lead us back to the same sequence at the safe house. Because the protagonist and the interactor are forced to participate in the heist for the purpose of the story. Yet, this is not just about the technical structure or calculations. It's about the act of choosing itself. The interactor is guided by a mix of expectation, curiosity, prior knowledge of genre conventions, and the awareness that their specific choices are actively excluding other narratives. As Matt's voiceover says, never underestimate the human factor. This leads us to agency and cognitive variables. Agency is the phenomenon where a player or an interactor feels that the actions presented to them are meaningful, and that their choice of action has a meaningful impact on the context in which they are engaging. It is the engine that drives the IDN. This leads us to what Janet Murray calls dramatic agency. Murray identifies it as the most important metric for evaluating the success of an interactive narrative. It is the ability to make meaningful choices. Perceived agency is the degree to which this power of agency is actually recognized by the user. This awareness activates a desire for a coherent story and a curiosity to uncover the unknown, making the unseen element as vital to the experience as the instantiated ones. The second part of our triptych is the known no more. In the previous chapter, I purposely chose to focus on an IDN that I still have access to. An owned copy of Late Shift grants me the agency to revisit the film and explore all the different outcomes and the yet to be known indefinitely. I would have liked to analyze Netflix's Bandersnatch as well, but this is no longer a possibility since the streaming platform has revoked our access to it. In 2025, Netflix removed the totality of its interactive catalog, which included about 25 films and shows. Their departure turned them into lost media, because it's highly unlikely they'll be playable again, given the technology was designed for and by Netflix. The branch manager is the engine, and no other competitor to Netflix hosts interactive titles. This is the blank window you get when you search for the interactive specials on the platform. The inaccessibility of these experiences go beyond Netflix. As cultural production is becoming increasingly platform dependent, the autonomy and the economic sustainability of particular forms of cultural productions is increasingly compromised. And the IDN format seems to be the most vulnerable piece in the digital landscape. As part of my research on interactive fiction, I have reached out to creators to study their independent or earlier IDNs, only to be told that it is no longer available for viewing. This is likely due to the absence of a suitable platform to host these complex interactive forms. We find ourselves in an era of digital fragility, where once accessible narratives are transformed into what I defined as the no more. This change is driven by what Cory Doctorow calls enshittification, a systematic decay where platforms chase profits at the expense of users and user experience. Some platforms are practicing content rationalization, effectively deleting original programs for tax write-offs. Netflix uses metrics like completion rates and efficiency scores to decide what content stays. It favors fast-paced content meant to be binge-watched. So a niche format like an interactive episode is far more vulnerable to cancellation because it cannot achieve the high metrics of mainstream hits. Netflix is also pivoting towards live events like live streaming WWE or NFL games, which demands an overhaul of their entire infrastructure. For example, they have to remove the branch manager, which means there is no going back. Under these politics, even award-winning shows like Bandersnatch are seen as disposable. As the official platforms erase their own history and the legal path becomes excessively restricted, consumers seek alternatives. Some go to fan-based initiatives like the one you see on the screen that emulates the branch manager. Other users turn to piracy. We have reached an age where unauthorized sites offer a more stable and comprehensive archives than the official service. However, piracy does not offer a true solution for interactive media. A pirated version of Bandersnatch is only one possible linear version of the film, as we will see in the next sequence.
Jerome F. Davies. Well, he can't be a great writer. He You're always flicking backwards and forwards in that.
No, it's a choose your own adventure book.
Hmm?
You decide what your character does. They're like a game.
Sounds thrilling. How about you decide what you want for your breakfast? Hmm? Both seem a bit kiddywink to me, but he will insist.
In this sequence of the pirated version of Bandersnatch, the agency is gone. The choices are predetermined by the uploader. The interactor is relegated to a passive observer. And if you've experienced Bandersnatch in the original version on Netflix, you would have noticed that in this linear version, the text and the interface are completely gone. The 10-second decision window is very awkward as we wait for the predetermined choice to play. Since Bandersnatch is a meta-commentary on choice itself, removing that choice fundamentally changes the work's identity. We technically have preserved the footage, or part of the footage, but we have lost the interactive experience.
When we look at this flowchart or the branching map of Bandersnatch, we see a vast multi-dimensional architecture of choice. But a pirated linear version preserves a fixed 90 minutes of the film, but loses roughly 80% of the potential footage. But more importantly, as we said, we are losing the identity of the work and the reason why it was conceived in the first place, the intention behind it, and all of its yet to be known potential. Now, if the yet to be known emerges from narrative possibility and the known no more results from platform erasure, the never will be known represents a deliberate production of inaccessibility, exemplified by the film 100 Years by Robert Rodriguez. I will start by showing you the teaser trailer.
In 2015, I, 𝗔𝗯𝘀𝘁𝗿, shot a film which will be held for 100 years. The time required to create Louis XIII. Imagine the future.
You're late.
You miss me that much? Must be terrible for you. Thrilling.
Hey, what are you guys doing here?
In 2015, director Robert Rodriguez and actor-writer 𝗔𝗯𝘀𝘁𝗿 were commissioned to make a film called 100 Years. It is currently locked in a safe that will not open until November 18, 2115. We don't know much about the premise. What we do know is that it's a science fiction film and that no one alive today will be able to watch it because it will be released in about 100 years. Now, unlike lost media, lost film, censored work, or obsolete digital media, 100 Years is inaccessible by design and only exists culturally through its absence. The public is told of its existence while simultaneously being denied the possibility of experiencing it. The core distinction between this stage and the no more is the nature of the disappearance. Here, absence is planned and engineered. Audiences become spectators, not of the film itself, but of its absence. Now, if you look at the screenshots from the comment section of the teaser on YouTube, we observe recurring forms of engagement, countdown, and messages to the future. This is creating a virtual bridge across time between the current spectator and the hypothetical future viewers. The film exists as a marketing strategy built on extreme exclusivity, from the product it is promoting, the cognac, to the audience, to the future audience. In contemporary media culture, visibility is associated with circulation, immediacy, but 100 Years reversed this logic by turning its inaccessibility into the spectacle itself. Of course, we cannot ignore the theatricals here, a century-long delay mirroring the aging process of the Louis XIII cognac that commissioned the project. By controlling the conditions of the film's release and the audience who is allowed to see it, the creators exercise what Jacques Derrida calls archontic power, the authority to determine not just what is preserved, but who and what is excluded. It's a deliberate exclusion that communicates a very specific, curated, and perhaps skewed version of our present to a future century, the vision of only a certain group of people. In contrast, in the never will be known, we must embrace the new frontiers. In this model, the archive preserves the object precisely by withholding it. Like the provocative idea of Yusei, who says that cinema is the art of destroying moving images, that the act of watching, critiquing, and circulating a film eventually wears it down. Therefore, by not showing 100 years, Rodriguez is, in a sense, protecting it from that destruction. A film that remains only a myth forces us to ask, what is the core of a film if no one is allowed to watch it? In the never will be known, the answer is not found in the frames of the movie, but in the speculative space it occupies in our culture today. In summary, the progression from Late Shift to Bandersnatch and 100 years illustrate a transformation in how we engage with moving images. The triptych that I proposed maps the shifting form of agency from interactor to spectator. In the yet to be known, we are invited into the narrative as active participants, navigating ghost narratives and assembling our own storyline from a database of possibilities. In the Know No More, we become victims of platform decay and the revocation of digital history, watching as corporate metrics overrode cultural value. In the Never Will Be Known, we become speculators confronting an engineered void, where absence itself becomes the spectacle. These three stages suggest that contemporary cinema is no longer defined solely by what is seen, but increasingly by regimes of access, delay, and enforced inaccessibility that reorganize the condition under which moving images can exist at all. Thank you for your time.